Back in 1903, deep in Clifton County, there used to be an asylum buried deep within the wilderness there. Pretty soon after the Civil War, people started inhabiting the area. Population-wise, it was around 300 or so. By today's standards, it would be considered a very small town. Nonetheless, people didn't like the idea of having an asylum just miles down the road. So they all got together and signed a petition for the asylum to relocate elsewhere. The petition passed and the new asylum was built, which is now known as Lorton Prison, a temporary facility for convicts to stay in until they are appropriately sentenced. In the autumn of 1904, the convicts were gathered and piled into a bus used to transport them to Lorton. Somewhere during the drive, not too far from where they left, the driver had swerved to avoid something in the road, and the bus had begun to tip, and soon was rolling down the hill in a terrible collision course. Most of the convicts on board were merely injured, but several managed to escape the bus and had fled into the night towards the woods. The next morning, a local police investigation had begun, and they began rounding up the escaped convicts. Hours turned into days, days into weeks, and weeks into months. After that time, everyone was recovered, all except for two people, named Marcus A. Walster and Douglas J. Griffin. During the search for both men, the police found dead rabbits, all of them half-eaten and dismembered, every now and then along their search. Finally, they would find Marcus dead by the Fairfax Station Bridge, now known as Bunny Man's Bridge. In his hand, he held a man-made hammer and knife-like tool, made with a sharp rock and a sturdy branch as a handle. They thought nothing of it at the time and didn't seem to care much about how he died, only that he was apprehended and they no longer had to worry about him. They had a name for Marcus, but later on they would realize that they had named the wrong person, the Bunny Man. Still searching for Douglas, they kept on finding dead, half-eaten rabbits every so often while the search continued. Eventually, they would have named Douglas the Bunny Man. Months passed by and the police gave up their search. Everybody assumed that the Bunny Man was dead by now, if not gone. So they went on with their small town lives. But come October, people started seeing dead bunnies reappearing out of the blue and began to start to fear the unseen. Halloween night came around, and as usual, a bunch of kids had gone over to the bridge that night to drink and do whatever kids their age did in the early 20th century. Midnight came around within minutes, and most of the kids had left, whilst only 3 of them remained bridge. Exactly at midnight, a bright light came from the bridge, right about where the kids were standing. A few seconds later, they were all dead, throats slashed with the same type of tool that was found next to the other escapee, Marcus. Not only were their throats slashed, but they were cut from their chest down to their waist, gutted like fish. The Bunny Man then hung both the boys from one end of the bridge with rope around their necks, hanging them from the overpass with their legs dangling in full view of any passing cars. The girl was hung very much in the same way, on the other side of the bridge. This all happened on Halloween in 1905. After that, they didn't see or hear anything from him for another year. Halloween 1906 was fast approaching, and the parents as well as the teens in Clifton still remember the incident that occurred 1 year ago at the bridge. His bridge. Bunny Man's bridge. That night, 7 teens were left remaining right before midnight at the bridge. Thinking the loved 6 remained inside, while one, an Adrian Atala, had remained a good distance from the bridge, hoping that she'd have enough time to escape if the same thing were to happen again. She was the only one to witness this event. A dim light walking the railroad track just before midnight, stopping right above the bridge and then disappearing. At the same time, a bright flash could be seen inside. She heard the deafening sounds of terrified screaming coming from inside the bridge that lasted only a few seconds. Moments later, they were all hung from the edge of the bridge, in the same fashion as the corpses found a year earlier. Horrified, she ran home and refused to tell of all what she had seen, and began spattering words mixed in incoherent mumblings to the people of her town that had to put together what they could make of it to come up with the rest of her story. At the time, no one understood it, or for that matter, believed her. Instead, they charged her with the teen's murders and locked her up in the asylum of Lorton. In 1913, the same thing happened again, with 9 teenagers this time, on Halloween night once again. Adrian was still locked up all the while. They did drop her sentence, but it was too late. The insanity had finally conquered her. Even if she had been released, she was too far gone to have a normal life. So she spent the remaining years in the asylum until she finally died in 1953 of reported shock. No one knows what exactly she died of shock from, but supposedly she had died in her sleep, dreaming of that one dreaded night. Perhaps the Bunny Man had finally gotten to her. More murders were to take place, however. Although after the murders in 1913, most people steered clear of the bridge on Halloween. 1943 rolls around, and 6 teenagers go strolling out on Halloween night. A couple hours later, all of them dead. Same way as all the others. Of course, investigations took place, but as usual, nothing new was discovered. 1976, the same situation occurs again. This time with 3 more people. The only other recorded incident since then was in 1987, just 12 years ago. Janet Chartier was enjoying the night with her 4 friends. Halloween night had finally come, and they had gone driving out to enjoy the night after invading the children's candy bags. They had settled around 11 p.m. at the bridge, waiting for midnight to come. None of them believed in the myth, so they decided to see it for themselves, and were soon to be the only ones who had actually withstood the Bunny Man. They had waited around an hour or so it was nearly midnight, when Janet started getting a little scared. They had all been pulling pranks on each other, jumping out of the bushes and screaming, so she was already a little worked up. By the time midnight hits, she is in a total panic. She's almost out of the bridge when the lights get really bright again inside. And when that happens, her body is halfway outside of the bridge. She can see her skin start tearing at her chest, but can see nothing piercing her skin. She finally manages to leave the bridge. Completely horrified, she hits a hanging body and knocks herself out. When she awakens, she discovers that she is bleeding. She was one of the lucky ones, and the cut had only just started, and wasn't that bad at all. She left that place and never returned to the bridge again. Since that time, she has been seen sitting on a swinging bench on her balcony every morning, just staring in the direction of the bridge a couple of miles down. From then on, the story remains as it is, untouched